Hi guys, Hobby Horse Ralph here. This is my review for the Peavey Escort 6000, which I've had for a little over a year, I guess. And I got to use it for, I guess, the largest event that I have had just a couple of days ago, over the weekend. And so I wanted to give you my thoughts on it. Here's some specs on the Escort 6000. It sells for around $9.99. Just Googling the title, and I saw some of the pricing out there. So I actually bought this, like I said, a year ago, maybe a little more than a year ago. And at that time, I paid $6.99 for it. So the price has gone up considerably, and we'll get a little more into whether or not it's still a good deal at the $9.99 price a little bit later on. This is a real short video. I just wanted to provide some feedback that might help some folks out. It does have 600 watts, 300 per channel or per speaker, for a total of 600. And the sound output, the power that you get, is one of the reasons I mainly went with the 6000. I wanted to make sure I had something that was powerful enough. I do I'd call it wannabe DJing on the side, and I wanted to make sure I had enough power. And it does have enough power, but I'll tell you about some of the events that I've done and how big they've been and what I mainly do as a musician as well. It does have 7 combination XLR 1/4 inch inputs for your cables, and that was another reason I went with this system. It's got more than enough inputs for mics and instruments. I would say for anywhere between a 1-person to a 3-person band setup. If you've got a 4 or 5 piece or more, I would really recommend you get a larger speaker PA system. I don't believe this one is just going to be powerful enough for you unless you're going to be playing very small venues. And I find it hard to believe that a 5 or 6 piece band is going to be playing a small coffee shop of 20 people. So if you're playing for large venues, you're going to want more powerful equipment. But it does have the 7 inputs, and I find that to be more than enough that I need for what I use it for. It also has a USB and aux input, so you can play music directly through the system. Sounds great. I've tried both of those, and they both work fine. No issues with the USB or the aux inputs. It also has Bluetooth wireless, so that you can play right off your phone, right off a laptop or an iPad, something like that. That works fine. From my phone, the distance, probably the best reception I get is anywhere from 0 feet to about 20 to 25 feet. It gets a little, the sound starts cracking up a little bit after that. It also has an onboard digital media effects through the mixer. That is spotty at best. It doesn't really produce, these tremendous sounds that you can get off the more expensive mixers or if you buy a standalone one, but it does have one. It also has a subwoofer out, 1/4 inch cable, and I'll go over that a little more as well. And it also has a monitor out 1/4 inch cable. Again, if you're only playing, with yourself as a standalone musician, or you're playing with 2 to 3 other instruments, you don't really need a monitor. You can hear the sound pretty well. Obviously, if you're playing with a 4, 5, 6 piece band, you're going to need a monitor. But again, if you're playing with that many people, odds are you're going to need a bigger sound system than this one. So here's my setup from the event that I just had over the weekend. It was a restaurant. And it was a pretty sizable restaurant. There's actually 2 rooms to this restaurant, and they're separated by a double door that were left open. And it was a total of about, I'm going to say 65 to 70 people, 75 max. And the first part of the room where my system is at, those folks could hear the sound perfectly well. The second part of the room, I did have to crank it up to the max volume for them to hear it, really well. And so it did fill up the first part of the room. It did not fill up the second part of the room with sound, but they could hear it pretty well. So you can see I have my two speakers about as far apart as I could put them in this particular room. That little hallway you see on the left led to a bathroom, and so I had to keep that clear. I have the mixer right behind me, and I have two microphones set up. And I was getting quite a bit of feedback. I initially had the speakers kind of against the back wall there, but I was getting a lot of feedback, so I ended up having to move the speakers kind of in front or almost directly to the side of me, but in front of the microphone, and that cut off most of the feedback. I did have to play with the settings a little bit, but I was able to get the sound that I wanted. It took a little bit of practice, a couple of songs before I got the sound exactly the way that I wanted it. In this setup, I also have an Alto TX 212S subwoofer, and it's you know, Peavey understood that you're not going to get a lot of thump with this sound system, and so they conveniently put a subwoofer out jack on the mixer, and it does make it very convenient to add a subwoofer. And in this case, I added the Alto TX212S. It worked flawlessly. It's a really good sub. I recommend it for, again, it probably provided more bass than what I needed for that particular size room and setup, but it worked really well with the system and sounded absolutely wonderful. Several people commented on the bass. It really filled up the room, gives quite a thump to the room setup, and so that was a good thing. One of the things, again, that I like about the Peavey Escort 6000 is it does have all those inputs, so you've got plenty of space on board for the two mics that you see. My piano, my keyboard is also connected to the keyboard, and so that only took up 3 of those ports that I was talking about. Still had 4 more if I did want to add. If somebody was playing an acoustic or electric or a bass, I'd have no trouble even if I set up another microphone. So if you're looking for a PA system, you want to consider those things because you want to make sure you have enough room for all of them. The speakers have their dedicated inputs for left and right, so they don't take up any of the space on the XLR 1/4-inch combo inputs. And so some of the pros and cons, when you get down to it and actually use it, in my case, as I said, for a room of about 70, 75 people max, they produce clear sound even at max volume, which kind of surprised me because I did max it out. I had it all the way up as far as the volume would go, and the sound was still very clear. We also had somebody singing through the mic at one point, and it was incredibly clear. So I had no issues even at max volume. We did have it running for about 3 hours continuously. We did take a short break of, I guess, about 20 minutes. But other than that, it ran for 3 hours. The speakers didn't heat up, the mixer didn't heat up. They got warm, but they didn't heat up. Had no trouble with that. And as I said, the mixer does provide more than enough inputs for your mics and your instruments for anywhere from a 1 to, say, a 3-piece ensemble. More than that, I really do think you need a bigger system. The effects on the mixer, as I mentioned earlier, they really only change the treble and the bass. They don't do much more in the way of giving you all these different sounds that you might get from a dedicated or a more high-end mixer. But the equalizer also changes your treble and bass. So I didn't find, now I'm still learning how to use this system in a live, venue setting. And so maybe I need to play with those effects a little bit more. When I use it at home, it's just my home entertainment system. I really don't use those effects, but I didn't get a whole lot out of them at this event. So for me, the sound level is good for home use. If you're going to use it at home, you have a group of friends over, and you just want a better sound than just a regular stereo or portable radio or something, this will do it. I mean, it'll knock your socks off, produces great sound, even without a subwoofer. You get pretty good, decent bass for home use. And so I would recommend it for that. If you're going to use it in a commercial environment, as I said, for around 50 people, indoors, works fine, and you'll be satisfied with it. You max it out at about 75 people, indoors, I still think you're okay. You take it outside, you definitely don't feel the bass anymore, and you can still hear the sound pretty clear, but you don't get the volume. And so if you're a DJ or a wannabe DJ, you're probably going to want to buy something a little more high end with a little more output, unless you're going to be playing smaller venues. And again, for me, either playing my guitar or my keyboard as a musician in a coffee shop or thing like that, it works fine. But if you're a professional DJ or you want to be a professional DJ, this is probably not the system you want to get long term, because you're not going to get as much as you want out of it for the larger events. The other thing is, if you want that thump in the bass, you're not going to get it from this system. It gives you okay bass just to be listening to it. It does not make your heart pound or make the ground shake. You're going to have to add a bass. And as I said earlier, I recommend the alto. It worked really well for smaller events. The other thing that I did not like, that turtle shell type carrying case. It is a neat system to store everything in there. The latches do not work very well. They're kind of flimsy and tricky to play with. I don't even trust them. But the system as a whole is kind of unique in that you can carry it around. It has wheels like luggage so that you can roll it around. But I just don't trust those latches. They seem like they're going to break if I take it, out on the road a couple of times. The speaker poles, which you can probably see in the picture, are kind of flimsy at best. You can upgrade the bottom of the speakers. They have a larger opening for the standard size speaker poles, but the ones that come with the system are very flimsy, and you need to be careful. I put a little bit of tape around the top of the pole, because when you slide the speaker on there, it'll turn around. I mean, the wind will literally turn it, even indoors. A draft will turn it, they kind of fit kind of loose. So I just put a little bit of painter's tape, put them on there so that they'll stay fixed nice and tight to the speaker pole. Is it worth the price tag? Which, as I said, right now they're about $9.99. It depends. And if you want a simple system, easy to carry, plenty of inputs that give you a decent sound for smaller venues, then you'd probably say yes. If you want high-end sound and you want the ability to use it even in larger group gatherings, this is probably not going to work for you, or you're probably not going to be satisfied with the output of this system. It does a lot of things because it has the digital effects, because it has the subwoofer output and the monitor output, because you can Bluetooth and do all of those things. They're all helpful. I just don't know that they're worth $1,000. For me, at the price that I paid, it is worth it. And so I do like the system. I don't play larger venues. I'm not planning on playing larger venues. So for me, this system works. It's very portable. It's very easy to use. And I like the sound that I get from it for smaller venues. So hopefully this information will help you. If you have any questions, by all means, drop me a note, let me know. If you have some thoughts on your own and how this system, if you have it, has worked out for you, we'd like to hear that also. Anyway, Happy Horse Ralph here, and I hope this review was helpful to you. Thanks.